So welcome today to Plant Pathmakers, unrecognized leaders who are helping change what the world eats, one person, one meal at a time. As you might know, the plant-based movement is growing every day, thanks to the hard work of passionate plant-based giants who are showing us that the way to optimal health is by leaving behind the standard American diet, whose appropriate acronym is SAD, and adopting a plant-centered one instead. So many of us have been helped by what we've learned from them, and for this I'm grateful. But it's occurred to me that the voice of the many others on this plant to wellness have stories to share too. Stories which we have not yet heard, but that would be valuable in motivating others to switching to a way of eating that increases plants in their diet and ultimately transform their lives. In these conversations, we'll meet such people of all ages and from all walks of life who are living and eating plants. Regardless of how they label themselves, the essence of what they eat as a central part of their diet is the same: plants. We'll hear their stories, including challenges and triumphs, as a way to get more people to see that they too can change the way they eat, and in so doing, transform their lives. I believe that one person, one meal at a time, we can help change the way the world eats. Today we have with us someone who I only met through Instagram, and I've been very drawn to her, to you, who is known as Family First Meals. If I have that correct, Family First Meals.
It's family Meals First.
Family Meals First. Okay, that makes more sense. I always write it down wrong. Family Meals First on Instagram. I've also seen your YouTube videos, and particularly the sweet potato one is amazing. So I would highly recommend that you check her out on Instagram, Facebook. I know you have a website too that I've looked at, and you have a wealth of information. And I have to say that the thing that I love most are the videos you post, particularly on Instagram, are short, to the point, and full of information.
Thank you.
And that's what attracted me first to following you. And then little did I know, but come to find out you have a PhD in nutrition. So I've never spoken to somebody with a PhD in nutrition. So I'm at the same time a little intimidated and excited to hear what you have to say, because I have 100 million questions, and I will try to be quiet because I think the best way for us to learn is by listening to what you have to say. So starting with that introduction, then it's Dr. Karrie Heneman. And I guess if you wouldn't mind just starting to tell us your story and how you got to where you are now, and your whole, educational background. And I know you're also a family of 4 children, which also is intimidating to me, being the mother of a child. And just a little bit more about, what you guys do as a family and how you came to this path of wellness and where you are and where you're going. So now I will listen.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. And it's been so fun to get to know you over Instagram a little bit better. So I am a mom of 4. I do have a PhD in nutrition. I did my undergraduate at Stanford in the late 90s. And I, at that point, was really interested in going to medical school, but I wanted to do nutrition. And at the time, everybody told me, follow your path. By the time you graduate from undergraduate, nutrition will become more of medicine. We're starting to see the importance of food and diet, the link between food and diet. So lo and behold, I got to my senior year of undergrad. I had a major in human biology completed, and nutrition still wasn't really part of medical school. So I kind of panicked. In the fall of my senior year, I applied to graduate school programs in nutrition and ended up at UC Davis the following year studying human nutrition. And I loved it. And I just am super passionate about educating people about fruits and vegetables in particular, and how they can impact their diet. My research at UC Davis focused on plant-based nutrition. And not only did I do science-based studies, but I, with animals and cell culture, I also went out into the community and educated families. I worked with a farm to school program and the food stamps program. And I worked with schools to connect them with farmers and looked at the impact on increasing fruit and vegetable consumption and how that improved the wellness of the community. And so I did that as a postdoc, and then I worked at UC Davis as research faculty for a while as well, working with the food stamps program. And then I became pregnant with my first child. And as we all know, big changes in life have a huge impact on your philosophy and your mental health and outlook on things. So I did that for a year and just felt like the whole time the balance wasn't right. My husband and I were living in the Bay Area at that time. I was commuting up to Davis. He was commuting into San Francisco, and we had no family, and it was awful. And so I did that for a year and then decided to quit my job and stayed at home. And, fast forward 10 years, we now have 4 children. And about 2 years ago, I kind of, after being in moms groups and kind of thinking about what I wanted to do with my life, I decided I really wanted to kind of encourage other moms to take control of the health and wellness of their family, and also to teach moms how to educate their kids, because I feel like, personally, I only have so much knowledge, right? And so I need to trust a lot of other people. And nutrition is what I know, right? I've studied it my whole life. But I'm telling you, I go into the grocery store and there are new products every single time, right? And sometimes, especially if you've got a baby that's crying or you're rushing to pick up somebody from school, it can be totally overwhelming, right? So you just grab what's on the shelf and you may not know what extra probiotics are, or if your child really needs extra choline or whatever it is, right? Every day it seems like there's a new buzzword out there. So I decided that in order to get back into the field and go back to what I really love talking to people about nutrition, I would kind of start my own business, because it allows me to be home with my kids, which for our family is the right fit. I realize that's not right for everybody, but for us and for my husband, I really need to be around most of the time. But I wanted to give back to others and share my nutrition knowledge with other people. So I started Family Meals First, and that is really what I try to do, is connect with moms mostly, but any type of caregiver, and teach them some quick nutrition facts so that the next time they're making decisions for their family, they can do so with accurate information, because there is a plethora of inaccurate information out there.
Oh, no kidding. Right. No, your story is fascinating. So I'm going to start with what you said last and then work backwards a little bit, because the grocery store is the place that I think impacts all of us, regardless of how we eat every day. And the marketing, the labeling is very misleading. And I have found, even myself, trying to be a conscientious consumer, that I come home with something and it's not as advertised, and you really have to, and I'm getting older, and I'm a little vain, so I don't put my glasses, my readers on in the store, and I come home with something and I realize it's not what I thought it was. It really isn't. Especially when it's marketed as, no sugar. Well, it's got, 16 different other types of sugar, except for something named sugar, or no oil. Well, there are a lot of things anyway. So I think that's a big challenge. And, I think people's intent is to eat well most of the time, probably. And what we're faced with every day is misleading and exhausting. And, you probably know more about this, but, I've heard recently something called decision fatigue, and how, as the day progresses, we've made so many decisions that when we're tired and hungry and it's the end of the day, we're just going to eat what's there. And if what's there we believe is healthy for us and isn't, we're not in any better place. So, I don't know if you can speak to a little bit about that, about, environment change, cleaning up your environment, because I think that that's an important component of this. And then going back to what you said initially about, your path, thinking you might be going to medical school. That's I'm in this kind of the back door. I did go to medical school, and I'm here to tell you, we didn't learn anything about nutrition. And, you don't know my story, but even though I had normal blood pressure, normal cholesterol, normal blood sugar, everything normal, I was, and I'm not even 5'2", about 70 pounds overweight. And you think, how could you ever get to that point? Because I didn't know any better, and I had a lot of education and I didn't know any better. And so part of what I want to do really is to have people see that what we're being told, and that the idea, I say to other people, that healthy at any size, I don't think is true. And I think that's a way to keep us in denial and keep us from facing the hard truth about making change. So anyways, I've said a lot now. If you could, I guess, go back to, your thoughts on those issues as well.
For sure. So to start out with changing the environment. So I'm a big believer that foods are not good or bad, right? I really encourage my kids to view food as fuel, right? But my message to them is always that we want to put the best food in our body all the time. So if we are going to a birthday party, eat the cake, right? Like you shouldn't feel bad or guilty about eating the cake, but most of the time at home, we are going to eat balanced meals, we're going to eat nutritious food, and we're going to have snacks that are healthy, right? So we just got Peeps cereal in the mail. It is marshmallow flavored with extra marshmallows. And, my gut reaction was, okay, I'm just going to throw this away. But I didn't, because my kids were excited about it, right? And I'm holding to my mission that no food is bad, right? But it's in the pantry, it's tucked away. I will bring it out for a special occasion and we'll enjoy it. But I'm not giving my kids Peep cereal for breakfast every day. And I think, especially for kids who need fat, and they also need to experience what it's like to overeat sugar and to enjoy meals, because that's really important too. They need to hear that message that food is not good or bad. No food is off limits. But in my house, treats are tucked behind a pantry, right? I don't keep them out on the counter, right? I don't give my kids money to buy snacks at school. I really try hard, and it is not easy, but I really try hard to pack snacks for them so that when they're hungry, they have something nutritious to grab, right? An apple instead of a cookie. In our garage, I keep packages of dried fruit and dried nuts and freeze-dried fruit. So when they come in after school and they're starving and we're transitioning to go to other activities, they can grab those, right? Now, if we're at the baseball game and the ice cream truck pulls up, we're not going to not have it. But like I said, most of the time, I'm providing my kids with nutritious food. So that's what they're filling up on. And I'm now seeing it. My oldest is now 14. And, when she hangs out with friends and she eats too much junk, she kind of self-regulates. And she's like, oh my gosh, I really just want to have a bowl of fruit right now, right? So that's all part of living. And I think it's important for kids to be able to experience those things while they're young, so that when they're adults, they can realize the importance and stick with it, because it's not always easy, right? Especially as adults, when you're going out to dinner or, in the office, you have that pressure to eat out every day. And if you want to make smart choices, you need to have that internal understanding of why it's important to eat well. Let's see, I'm trying to think, what was the next thing that you wanted to touch on? Medicine and food. I do believe that. I'm working with more and more physicians. My father and my brother and sister are all physicians. So I do understand that about doctors. I mean, doctors play such an important role in our life, right? And food and medicine need to go hand in hand, though. And like you said, doctors are required to learn so much information, but unfortunately, nutrition is a really small part of that. So there are many doctors that are educated in nutrition currently, but it is always good to ask your doctor nutrition questions and be sure that they have an understanding of it. And if they don't, to be able to turn to another resource where you can get accurate information from a nutritionist. So I always encourage people to look at websites that are verified. So the American Dietetics Association is always a great website to turn to. And then for the most part, anything that comes out of a university is going to be research-based and information-based. So that would be another place to look. I like to look at Harvard. I like to look at the Mayo Clinic, National Institutes of Health. Those are great resources to go look to find accurate nutrition information.
Oh, interesting. And I guess jumping way ahead, I hadn't planned to ask you this till later, but now that we're talking about information, what do you recommend to people regarding supplementation? What do you recommend to people? This is a big question now too. Healthy fats, are they important for adults? Are they important for adults who are overweight? Because there's a lot of information and it's not all consistent. So it is hard to figure out what to do. Yeah.
So, I mean, the supplement industry is $1 billion industry, right? So my gut reaction to any supplement is always no, right? That being said, in today's day and age, it is hard to get all your nutrient needs met. I mean, I eat mostly plants, and I'm a petite woman, so I take a calcium supplement because I don't think that I get enough calcium in my diet. So I think that it's important to immediately stop yourself before buying a supplement, because I think it's really easy to pour money into buying a supplement that you don't really need. That being said, there are certain nutrients that you can't get enough of. Calcium, vitamin D, iron as a woman is also really important. So those nutrients are something that you need to have in the back of your head. And if counting things or keeping track of numbers is too challenging for you, which I have to be honest, it is too challenging for me. I can't think about that every day. And I, have studied nutrition forever. So I take a basic multivitamin. A rule of thumb for that is, though, that you don't want it to have more than 100% of the RDA for any of the nutrients. And that will help you regulate, because if you're taking a multivitamin and then you're also eating food, you're already going to get more than 100%, right? So if your multivitamin has 1,000% of something, you're either going to pee it out if it's a water soluble vitamin, or if it's a fat soluble vitamin, right? It's going to get stored in your body. And over time, you can actually reach toxic levels of some of those nutrients, and that can have a negative impact on your health as well. So if you do choose to take a multivitamin, that's look for the USP label. So make sure that it's verified, and then also make sure that it doesn't have any more than 100% of any of the RDAs. As far as fat goes, so I think it's important to explain to people that, right, calories are, the macronutrients are carbohydrates, protein, and fat, right? And carbohydrates and protein have 4 calories per gram. Fat has 9. So just basic math, right? Like, it's more, the same amount of fat is more calories, right? So fat is important, right? It makes us feel full. It plays an important role in our body, but it is really easy to quickly get too many calories from fat. So, like nuts, for example, we all know that nuts are healthy, right? But if you have 4 handfuls of nuts, which I think 4 handfuls of any type of snack is really easy to do, right? You can quickly eat 500 calories, right? Which for a snack is not really what you want. That's like a meal, right? 500 calories. So, fat is something that as an adult we need, but I do think it's important to keep an eye on. I know there is a big movement in the plant-based community to avoid fats and oils completely. And I do think for some people that works. I am running all the time, and if I eat food without fat or without any sodium, I start to feel lightheaded and I'm hungry all the time, and it just doesn't work for me. And I think that's another important thing in the field of nutrition that we're starting to recognize, is that there's no set rule, right? Like, if you think about it, our genetics are all different, right? We are all slightly different people. And that doesn't mean that, basic rules don't apply to you, but it does mean to listen to your body. And I think we all need to take time to slow down and listen to our body and think about it. For some people, they need to eat a higher percentage of protein than carbohydrates. And for some people, more carbohydrates are better. That's what their body runs off the best. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with the idea of different people needing different things. And my husband is very thin. And when he eats the way I eat, he can lose weight, in a day more than he needs to. And so he needs to eat a lot of nuts. I mean, nuts are a central part of his diet, really. Nuts, butters he needs. And if I have in 1 month what he has in 1 day, I will gain weight.
Yes.
And, the interesting thing that I learned, I wore a continuous glucose monitor recently, and I was really interested for myself, the question about fat, and as a way to, extrapolate that information to other people too. And so I did see that my glucose variability was more than ideal when I was eating nuts. And probably, I think, my end result, what I decided is that if you have extra body weight, extra body fat, then you are by definition, even if it's just a little bit, and I had already lost a lot of weight, you are by definition insulin resistant. And if you're insulin resistant, you're going to hang on to that weight. And for me, the way to break that cycle, because I now am following a low fat, hopefully plant-based way, and I'm losing weight is to get rid of what I thought was not even a significant amount of fat in my diet. And again, I don't know how long I will do that or whether this is permanent or temporary, but the way my body uses fat is much different than my husband, and he needs it. He absolutely needs it. So, I agree with what you're saying. And I think that's probably maybe more the direction we'll be moving towards. I've heard people say, that we have to extract the essence of what is good for all of us. Plants, nobody's going to dispute that eating more plants is good for us. And then everything else kind of is personalized, right? I don't know if you experience that in your own family, that you guys eat differently as well, or.
Yes, we absolutely do. Yeah, so I think I shared with you, my husband, he is from Minnesota. When we met, there were, I think, 5 vegetables that he considered vegetables, and one was potatoes and one was corn. So we have grown as we've had more kids and we've explored food together. His palate has expanded enormously. And he eats things now like asparagus and Brussels sprouts, even on occasion. It's not his favorite, but he will eat it. Sweet potato fries, all those things, because he has expanded his palate. So we, again, my approach to meals is, because I'm also a mom of 4. So there's no time, right? And I think regardless, whether you're a mom of 1, a mom of no children, a mom of 4, we're all busy, right? And I feel like in this day and age, it's nonstop. But you need to make creating food for yourself and for your family a priority. Like, there is no greater gift you can give to yourself than to create healthy meals for yourself and make that a priority. So I batch cook recipes, and I tend to batch cook at least 1 or 2 forms of protein a week. And then I meal plan. And when I grocery shop, I make sure that we have at least 1 fruit for every breakfast, that we have a fruit and a vegetable for every lunch, and then a fruit and a vegetable for every dinner. And if you think about the math, that's already 5 servings a day, right? And sometimes we have more, or it's a bigger serving. So that helps me consistently get 5, at least. I shouldn't say get, because my kids don't always eat all the fruits and vegetables that I put on their plate, but I am serving 5. Yes, offering 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. And it helps me, without really thinking about it, to make sure that I stay to that consistently. And those plant foods are the majority of the foods that we're eating, right? And then we do have a protein at every dinner, or a main dish. Sometimes it's a grain mixed with protein, and that will be our protein source at every meal as well. But at least half, if not 3/4 of the plate, is fruits and vegetables. So that's kind of our approach. And like you, my husband, when COVID hit and he was no longer in San Francisco working every day and eating out on his own, he actually lost 30 pounds in the year that we were together.
Wow.
And that was not dieting at all. It was just eating the food that I prepared daily, rather than eating out every single day. Even to the point that when he went for his annual checkup, the physician was like, "Oh my gosh, we maybe need to look into this, because are you sure you weren't dieting at all?" And it's been consistent. He hasn't lost any more. It just was weight that he needed to take off. But just by changing his diet, he was able to make that change that's really improved his health.
Right. No, that's interesting. And also, the more I hear from people is the more they include plants in their diet, the more they attain and maintain their natural weight without feeling deprived. And I know, going back, you were talking about, balance, and no food is bad with your kids. I think that whole component of deprivation is what really triggers overeating, right? And triggers searching for things that maybe we wouldn't eat otherwise. And so when you're satiated and not deprived and you have balance, then you're probably going to eat quantities and types of foods that are best for you and nourish your body in the best way.
Plants in their intact form. And that doesn't mean that we're not steaming or roasting or you don't have to just eat raw carrots all day long. I think that's an important message to send to people too. But they have, not only do they have more vitamins and minerals, and they have them in amounts that are appropriate, right? Because they are created naturally, and we've been eating these things for centuries. But there's also fiber, and fiber is such a key component of making us feel satisfied and full. And most of the packaged foods that you're going to buy at the grocery store in the middle aisles are devoid of fiber. or if they have fiber in them, it's added back in after the processing, and that form of fiber is not natural. So our body handles it in other ways, and that's where you can have stomach issues, upset stomachs from fiber that's been added back into foods.
Right, right. No, I know that. I mean, years ago, they may have them, I don't even know, but I tried a fiber one bar, thinking
Yes.
good. And oh my gosh, I mean, I was miserable. I mean, from
Yes.
one bar. And if you read the ingredient, like if I read the ingredients now, I'd say I would never eat what's in that, really, not to badmouth them, but I just wouldn't. Anyways, and people, it is marketed as a health food, and people need their fiber, and you wonder
And
why.
it's really just a candy bar with
Yes.
vitamins loaded into it. And I think, we all want a quick fix. I mean, I'm the same way, right? If I can cut off 2 minutes from any process,
Right.
I think it's like internally, it's, I think like, okay, I should do it, right? Because it's going to save time. But the reality is there's no quick fix for eating healthy, right? Like it takes time. And you have to just eat mostly plant-based. Like I said, it doesn't have to be nothing at all. Although for some people, I think that's where they need to start because they need to make that transition. But it's got to be most of the time, and it's got to be most of the time really for the rest of your lives. I mean, that's another thing that I really preach against is fad diets, right? And I know for some people they just want to kickstart, right? And they need kind of a framework to start with. So something like Weight Watchers can be super helpful because it can help them learn things like portion sizes and things like that. But ultimately, you need to learn how to eat healthy for the rest of your life, right? You can't just do something for 2 weeks and think that you are going to be healthy for the rest of your life after that.
Right. No, absolutely. And, even my mom has macular degeneration, and I talked to her about how, dietary changes may improve or at least prevent the progression of macular degeneration. Yeah. And she said, can I just take some vitamins? Because she doesn't really want to make a change in the way she eats. I understand it's hard. But like you, I don't see that there's another way. And I'm at the point where it's okay. I don't want another way because I really enjoy how I'm eating. But when you're at that beginning and the change is so dramatic, I know it's hard. When we first transitioned from standard American to more plant-centered, we looked at each other like, this is it? What are we doing? And, we had made a commitment to follow a plant-centered food plan for 21 days because there was a book out that, Beyonce had followed some vegan thing, whatever. And, so we followed this thinking, we said it after 21 days, if we don't like it, we'll just go back. And by that point, and, now you hear more that habits take longer, but for us, it was 21 days. By 21 days, we were used to it and we were on board and it was great. But that initial change is really hard. It is.
And
yeah.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that because, again, it's kind of like we are bombarded with beautiful images of perfect plant-based meals every day, right? And the reality is when I open my refrigerator, I think like, I'm not going to create a beautiful kale salad. And to be totally honest, I don't even really like kale, right? Like it's like grass.
Keep trying. I like it now, really. Like I didn't before. It does taste good to me, but anyway.
I have found that if I get baby kale, I like it. And if I, marinate it with dressing for a little bit, then I really enjoy it. But for a long time, I still occasionally will like go and order a kale salad and it'll just be like too kale-y. That's what I feel like. But the reality is that with a little bit of planning and consistency, and, other small changes, meal planning, but also planning out your pantry, making sure that you have some basic ingredients on hand all the time so that you can pull out a few things and make a healthy meal quickly rather than picking up the phone and ordering out food. Because the reality is, we eat out once or twice a week. So I, absolutely love eating out and it's a wonderful break for me. But we always eat way more when we eat out, right? And that's okay occasionally, right? It's not a bad thing. But as far as health and consistency and even weight loss, right? Like if you're eating out all the time, it's really hard to meet your dietary goals. Right. So I always keep things like low sodium minimal ingredient pasta sauce on hand, whole grain pastas, whole grains. I always have frozen vegetables in my freezer. So leafy greens, green beans, mixed vegetables. So that's super easy. I always have things like apples and pears and lemons and oranges in my fruit drawer. So I can always grab that out for fruit. I always do canned beans. I have, boxed beans, so they are BPA free, and dried beans and canned beans. So tortillas I keep on hand, all those things. So, on Tuesday nights, for example, we don't get home until 7 o'clock. My kids have soccer, and by the time I roll in, like, I'm exhausted. So on the best days, I'll have prepared it a little bit beforehand. But the reality is, like, some Tuesdays, right? Like, we are home at 7 and I have done nothing. But I can open, when I get in the door, I can put on a pot of water to start boiling. I can, go get my kids cleaned up from the day, and then I can throw in some pasta and put on some sauce and a frozen vegetable, and we have a meal on the table, and it's better for us than stopping at McDonald's on the way.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, definitely.
And, it's better for my kids too, because it's less time as well. Right.
Right. Yes, no, definitely. I guess you talked about going out to eat. If you wouldn't mind just addressing, what do you do when you go out to eat to make sure you're eating in a way that mirrors more what you're doing at home, so that it's not so divergent from what you're used to?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So one of the things that I do is, for me, I have a sweet tooth, right? So I like bread, but when we go out to eat, I don't eat bread, because I would rather have something sweet at the end of the meal than have carbohydrates during the meal. Now, I have lots of friends that are always like, oh, you don't like bread, you like ban bread, or, that's my favorite, I don't want dessert. And those are all different strategies that you can use. But the reality is, you can't have it all the time, right? So for me, I would rather have a meal that is lighter in calories, and then save a little bit of room at the end to have something for dessert. So, and I tend to stick to lean meats if I'm having meat, although I eat mostly plant-based now, so I often don't choose meat. But fruits, I like vegetable-based dishes, plant-based dishes, and oftentimes I will have them leave off sauces and put them on the side, so I can control the amount. Not that I don't have the sauce, but it helps me to control the amount, because sometimes I will find that, like dressing, for example, right? If I go to a restaurant that I know they're not heavy on the dressing, but sometimes I'll get dressing, right, and it'll be like soaked in dressing, right? And it's just a lot of extra calories that you don't need, right? And then I always have them leave off cheese, is the other thing that is a super easy way to get a ton of extra calories. And oftentimes, like tacos and things like that, they don't really need the cheese, right? So it's just kind of an extra. And again, if cheese is your thing and you love cheese, then for sure enjoy a little bit of it, but think about other ways where you can make smarter choices. So I think in eating out and in life, it's a trade-off, right? You got to think, like, what is my number one thing that's most important for me? And for me, that's sweets, right? Like, when I'm going out, I want to have a treat. And so if that's the case, then I need to figure out other ways that I can cut back and what that is.
And so what about, you spoke, people in your family are in medicine. What about your extended family, your extended community? Is the way you eat different than other people? And have you gotten, pushback for that? Do you surround yourself with people that are like you? What have been the challenges? And your kids are, the age where they're getting a lot of peer influences, and they're out on their own more and more, and just kind of, if you wouldn't mind just addressing all of that.
Yeah. So I'm half Italian. My dad is 100% Italian. And I grew up in a family that my great grandmother was an amazing cook. I mean, she would buy meat and grind it and make her own meatballs. And I still can remember, just like the most amazing thing, right? But if you think about it, like, she bought pork and ground it herself, and she bought beef right from the butcher that had been, just made and ground it herself, right? So that's really different than me going now to the store and buying sausage that has been processed beforehand, right? So I am all about food. It's an important part of my life. But ironically, my mom was kind of into health food from the get-go, that she always, every once in a while, she would go on the stint where, she would get some new type of bread that my dad would call like rock bread or ever. And, we knew if we could take my dad to the grocery store, we'd come home with all sugar cereal. Right. But for the most part, my mom, she would like buy 2 boxes of Cheerios, right? The sweetened kind and the unsweetened kind, and mix it. So she was always trying to kind of, incorporate things. And then I was a swimmer in elementary and middle and high school. And so that's kind of where I first got interested in nutrition, because my coach, we'd load up on carbs the night before a swim meet. And then I would notice how it would impact my performance. And I kept thinking, like, that's so interesting how like what I eat the night before is having an impact on how I perform the next day. Right. And it wasn't at the time, it wasn't like we were tracking it really closely, but it did. If I ate healthier food, I felt better and I was better able to compete the next day. So it just left a huge impact on me. So now currently my sister's a dermatologist, my brother is a cardiologist, and they eat more plant-based foods. And in fact, I have another brother who is not in medicine, but he and his wife cook plant-based meals all the time. So fruits and vegetables have become an even bigger part of our own family meals. And, if we go back again to my great grandmother that I told you about, even though she had meat and she made her own meatballs, vegetables and fruit were still a big part of the meal, right? Like most of the meal was the pasta sauce that she made with whole grain pasta that she made herself. And there's always a big salad on the table, and there was always sauteed greens and other things. So I think we like to think that people eat meat all the time and that our ancestors ate it, so we should be able to eat big portions of meat too. But the reality is, one, they probably didn't. If you look historically at people who live the longest, their diets are mostly plant-based. And 2, we are not nearly as active as our ancestors were, right? Like if you are going to go work in the field for 12 hours, then you can tolerate a little bit more fat and a little bit more calories. But if you're going to sit at your desk all day and maybe go out for a 30-minute walk, then you don't have that excess caloric deficit to deal with.
Right. So interesting. So my daughter was a competitive swimmer in college and is still, she's beyond college now, but still is in a master's program. Did you swim for Stanford?
I did not swim for Stanford. No, I got offered a scholarship at Grinnell. So
oh, wow.
Stanford was a little out of my league.
Yeah. Then you were a good swimmer then. Wow.
Thank you.
You still swim now too?
I do. I don't as much because it's easier for me to go out for a run. I have discovered running because I can just leave the house and do it quickly, but there's something about swimming that I love. I really love doing it.
Right. Yes. No, it is. It's a great sport. Not for me, but to watch, there's something, I don't know, poetic about watching someone swim. To me, it's so graceful. So kudos to you for that, because that
Thank
tells
you.
Yes, that you're a good athlete, because it's a hard sport. I think it's a hard sport. Anyways, I forgot to ask you when you were talking about supplements, which first of all, I don't know if I've ever seen the back of a bottle of a supplement that only has 100%. They seem to all be marketed like 500, 600%. So I think I need to look for like cheapo vitamins, and they probably would have less. But if you wouldn't mind talking about vitamin B12 and, what you think about our need for supplementation with vitamin B12. And again, I hadn't mentioned this before too, but the whole omega-3, omega-6, and, what do we need to do about those as well?
Yeah. So I do think that if you are solely plant-based, that you need to have a B12 supplement. And even if you're not plant-based, you could be low in B12 as well. And the next time before starting any supplement, you should always talk to your doctor and have them run some blood tests, right? Because sometimes it's unfounded. You hear something in the news that, I need iron, and so I should take iron. Well, iron taken in extreme excess can lead to problems. So it's always smart to at least have a conversation with your doctor prior to starting any supplement. That being said, B12 is definitely something of concern. The funny thing about B12 is we do make some of it, but we don't absorb enough of it. So you do need to take a supplement, and it's hard to find a supplement that is at the RDA. And that is because when you take B12 in the supplemental form, you don't absorb adequate amounts of it. So supplements often contain more than the RDA. And there's 2 ways you can deal with that. One, If it's a liquid vitamin, you can titrate it down to have more of a reasonable amount. And 2, you can take it every other day. And then 3, the other thing about B12 is it is water soluble. So the excess you are going to get rid of. So unlike some of the fat soluble vitamins, you don't have to be as concerned about having excessive B12, but you are going to have some expensive pee. So you want to make sure that even if it's, in excess of the RDA, it's not extreme excess, right? Like you don't need 5,000 times the RDA.
Right. And then what about the omega-3 and omega-6?
Yeah. So omega-3 and omega-6, those are essential fatty acids that we need. And fats, again, are important, right? Important for brain function and a variety of other things throughout our body. Hormones, fats are important. So there are two types of essential fatty acids, omega-3s and omega-6s. Omega-6s are more prevalent in our diet, so they're easier to get. Omega-3s are harder to get. They come from things like fish would be the immediate thing that we would think of, but also algae contains omega-3 fatty acids. So if you are eating mostly plant-based, but you include fish in your diet, that would be a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. But there's always the concern of mercury, right? And so you need to make sure that you are eating sustainable sources of fish and that they're not large fish, so they're not accumulating large amounts of mercury. If you don't choose to eat fish, you can get some omega-3 fatty acids from things like walnuts and flaxseed, but it's also probably, again, a good idea to consider taking a supplement. But you want to make sure that if you do take an omega-3 fatty acid supplement, again, that you're not taking it in excess of the RDA. And you have to make sure that's refrigerated, because those fatty acid supplements can actually go rancid relatively easy. So they need to be kept in a dark container in a cool, dry place, because if they're let out in the sun, they can become oxidized. And oxidation eventually leads to heart disease and cancer, right? So we don't want to take a vitamin that's been oxidized, because that could lead to have a negative effect rather than a beneficial effect.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I think most of them are probably housed in, the relatively opaque gel.
Yes.
Probably for that reason, but I don't think I've ever seen on a container, an omega-3 supplement that it needs to be kept in the dark. I don't think I've read that before.
Some of them are tinted and some of the capsules themselves are tinted, and those tend to be a better purchase. And it's never a bad idea to either pop it in the refrigerator or stick your vitamins in a pantry and that is like cold, rather than like keeping it on the counter, right? Which is, a lot of people keep their supplements out on the counter so they don't forget it. But maybe keep it tucked away in a pantry where you would remember it, label it so that you can take it out, but not let it sit out in the sun on your counter all day long.
Right. And what about, I'm assuming that your advice regarding supplementation is primarily for adults. What about for your kids? Do they take vitamins as well?
My kids don't. So they eat a varied diet. I shouldn't say they don't at all. When they were little, they did take vitamin D. And then 2 of my kids did need to take iron because they were anemic at one point. And anemia in kids is a really concerning issue. So you do want to make sure that your kids have high enough iron levels. And that can be caused by a variety of things, right? Not necessarily that they're not eating an adequate diet. It can be caused by a variety of things. So my oldest does not drink milk. And there's a lot of, milk is a controversial topic, right? That we're told that kids should have like 3 glasses of milk every day, right? And the thing with milk is it's a good source of protein. It's a good source of calcium and some of the other fat soluble vitamins that it's fortified, like A. So for that reason, milk is an inexpensive source of a lot of nutrients. That being said, you don't need to have milk daily. So my daughter, milk bothers her stomach. It also bothers my stomach. So she takes a calcium supplement. And I also make sure that she either drinks a plant milk that's been fortified with calcium or orange juice that's fortified with calcium. And my boys all choose to drink milk. So they have 1 to 2 glasses a day. They don't have a full 3, but they also get calcium-rich foods like broccoli and almonds are other good sources of calcium, plant-based sources. And then they eat probably a serving of cheese a day as well, so that they're also getting calcium from that. cheese or yogurt. So I don't give my kids a multivitamin because they eat a varied diet. Then they have a lot of fruits and vegetables and they eat a lot of whole grains. So for the most part, I don't. And I kind of shy away from a multivitamin because I think mentally as moms, it's easy to say like, okay, but my kid is getting a multivitamin, so I don't have to worry about the other things, right? I can check that box. And the reality is you can't, right? Like, if you want to take a multivitamin,
yes,
that is an insurance because your kid is very selective, right? There are a lot of picky kids out there. I like to use the word selective because I feel like picky is kind of a label. But sometimes a multivitamin can provide you with, you know, a little bit more assurance that they're getting what they need. But again, make sure that it doesn't have more than 100% of the RDA. And you still need to offer those foods and you still need to encourage them. You can't just rely on the multivitamin for them to get the nutrition needs.
Right. No, that's very good advice.
Thank you.
Because even the commercials for kids' vitamins basically say you don't have to worry about it if they take whatever vitamin is that is being marketed. You just don't worry.
And if you look at them, I mean, so kids' multivitamins are like candy. So if you do choose to buy them, you have to make sure that your kids understand that it's not candy, right? Because kids can easily overdose. So that is a worry. And also, like, if you look at the ingredients, it's a lot of junk and then a little bit of vitamins. And sometimes my other thing that I have a beef with is bars, right? There's a zillion bars out there, and some of them are packed with vitamins and minerals, right? So if your kid is eating 1 or 2 protein bars a day, right? And they're taking a multivitamin, again, you can really quickly get into that excessive amount, the upper intake levels for vitamins and minerals. So you want to be conscious of all those things. So I try to, when I do buy bars for my kids, I try to buy them without vitamins and minerals in them. I like things like Laura bars that are fruits and nuts that don't have a lot of added stuff in them, because again, if they start eating, you know, and kids are kids, right? So if it's in the pantry, they might go grab 2 or 3 of something. You can get levels in excess of what you would want.
Right. My husband loves those Laura bars, by the way.
It's so easy.
You know, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about vitamin D deficiency? Is it real? Because, you know, as you know, levels for anything are based upon population studies. And, you know, the question I have is, if your whole population is vitamin D deficient, is it really deficient, or are the normal values skewed in some way? Because I don't know anybody, I don't know about you, that's ever been tested for vitamin D, had a vitamin D level tested that's been normal. Everybody, you know, and I know I live in a cold, dark climate, and you're in sunny California, or sunny part of the world, I believe. And I still see that people are vitamin D deficient. Right.
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting. And I think the jury is still out on that, right? That so I will tell you, I go for a walk outdoors almost every day. And my husband, he works inside most of the day. He is vitamin D deficient and I am not.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So and I'm, you know, deficient in iron all the time. So you know, so again, that's why it's important to go have blood work done so that you know that you're making a wise decision for yourself and you're not jumping on the bandwagon of supplements just because somebody tells you it's a good idea to take a supplement. That being said, I do think if you're deficient, it's probably wise to take a vitamin D supplement. But again, don't go crazy because the jury's still out, right? And I think that Americans, we just want a quick fix all the time. And so vitamin D is one of those that's in the news a lot right now, that, you know, it could be the next, it was soy, and then it, you know, now it's vitamin D, and who knows, maybe it'll be something else in the future. And, you know, there's definitely a grain of truth in all of these hypotheses, but when we look at it more in depth, and also we have to remember, I know we were talking about like soil content, right? Like, you know, even though there's a grain of truth to some of these things, it's maybe no longer applicable, like the soil content, right? Our soil used to be much more rich in nutrients than it is now. So fruits and vegetables 50 years ago had a higher vitamin and mineral content than they do currently, right? And who knows, in another 10 years, they may even be lower, or they could be higher, right? So you got to put everything in context, and we need to look at Do more research. And I know that frustrates people because in nutrition, we always say, we need more research, but the reality is nutrition studies are really hard to perform, right? Because one, they rely on humans and none of us are 100% accurate. I mean, I can barely remember what I ate for lunch. So if you need me to recall what I ate over the last week, I'm going to do my best, but it's probably not going to be accurate. And then, there's also animal studies, which are also really controversial. And then on top of it, it doesn't always translate, right? Like a pig's gut is not necessarily the same as a person's gut. And like we said, even between people, there's variation with how people metabolize things. So, they make these recommendations and they're general recommendations. And that's why it's important to listen to your body and be in touch with your doctor and have open conversations with them about your diet and how different things affect you.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good advice. And something that I heard recently said that we probably should be testing more often, really, because, right now the guidelines, if your cholesterol is normal, you don't have it checked for another 5 years. Well, a lot can happen in that time. And, it's probably true for things like, vitamin levels as well. So, anyways, not that anybody really wants to get tested more often, but, the more points of information you have, maybe you're able to assess whether or not you're moving in the right direction anyways.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, I think that's helpful. So if you wouldn't mind now just talking a little bit about your business and what you're doing and what you hope to do with that. And are you including in any capacity or in any way kind of providing food for people, marketing that you would have a food business as part of this? Has that occurred to you? Because there's probably not just probably, there is a need. And just kind of what are your thoughts on where you are and where you want to go with this?
Yeah. So right now I'm focused on helping moms in particular create sustainable meal plans for their families, sustainable dinner routines, right? Learning how to grocery shop more effectively, learning how to prepare meals more effectively, learning how to batch cook, all those things. So I meet one-on-one with clients and we talk about their strategies and I kind of troubleshoot with them how they can make positive changes in their life to eat more healthy food and eat at home more of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I am also passionate, like I said, about giving people, empowering women in particular with accurate nutrition information, because I feel like I said, it's just overwhelming. You can't know everything. And, but eating is such a big part of our daily lives, right? So if you have some basic understanding about nutrition, then you can go to the grocery store more confidently, right? Because you can read those labels and understand what the jumble of words is telling you and know, a couple key tricks like, number one, I always tell people, to pick up the label and check the serving size first thing, right? It's becoming more accurate, but I bet you go look in your pantry right now and look at the serving size and you will find things that you think are a single serving that are actually like 1.56 servings, right? And, that may not be a big deal, but if you think you're eating a snack that's 200 calories and now it's 350 calories, right? That's, again, a significant difference.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I always tell people to look at added sugars and look at sodium, which is another thing, right? Something can say it has, it's low sugar or whatever, but then you look at it, right? And it's got fruit juice that's dried fruit juice, right? So which is essentially sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in 7 different forms. It's dried fruit juice and then it's dried apple juice concentrate, right? Which is really sugar. Mm-hmm. So even though it might not have a lot of sugar and it has quote unquote natural sugars, they're not really natural sugar. I mean, natural sugar is like in an apple, right? But now the more you process that natural sugar in an apple to make it concentrated, dehydrated apple juice sugar, it's no longer the same thing. Mm-hmm. So, and therefore it has a different impact on your blood sugar, which is a whole nother topic we can go into. So, looking at those 3 things, the serving size, the sugar content, and the sodium content. Another thing with sodium is I make sure a quick check would be to check the number of calories in a serving. And if it has more sodium, so 100 calorie snack should have no more than 100 milligrams of sodium. And that will help you keep under the 2000 milligrams a day.
I've heard that's a good trick. I think that's, yes. Well, good. And how do you get the word out to people How do people contact you? How do, is this word of mouth?
Come check us out on Instagram. That is my number one vehicle because I feel like I can reach the greatest audience that way. So you can find us at Family Meals First. And then I do also have a website, and you can click a link on there, or you can email me at Karrie, Karrie, at familymealsfirst.com. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I think a lot of people need the information that you have and the services that you provide. And I wouldn't be surprised. I know you're working to educate people, but I wouldn't be surprised if more people asked you to actually get involved in, somehow food preparation, manufacturing, something, because, as you mentioned early on, it's one of the biggest barriers that I see is time.
Yes.
And, so if you could facilitate easing that, people, I think, would be much more amenable to jumping on the bandwagon of changing what they eat. So anyways, I think that's an opportunity. Not that you may be interested, but who knows what comes along, right?
Absolutely. I'm always looking for new opportunities and building new partnerships, because I love Instagram, because I feel like I get to make relationships with people around the globe that are like-minded, and we can work together and make some change, which feels really good.
Absolutely. Yes. So I guess if you want to leave us with one last, whatever, pearl, summarize anything, what would you want to say to leave us today?
I would say stop waiting. There's no perfect time to make a dietary change. There's absolutely no reason that at the next meal, you can't eat a little bit healthier. I mean, I think that people, I'm going to start dieting on Monday, or I need to wait for a new week, or I need to wait till after Christmas or whatever. Start now, because the sooner you start to eat healthier, the sooner you're going to have a positive impact on your health. And, life is moving forward. So, think about it every time you go into the pantry about, do I really want this cookie? And if I do, absolutely go for that cookie, right? But if you're just grabbing a snack for mindless eating, maybe start with a glass of water. And if you're still hungry, maybe switch to an apple. And that has to be most of the time in order to maintain our health.
No, I agree. And it, may not be easy, but it does get easier over time, because that is a habit that we're developing as we're practicing it. And so I think I would add that, just a little asterisk to that, having gone through that, I know that you have to just do it and it will get easier. So thank you today for taking the time to educate us and to tell us about your path and your family's path. And hopefully people out there who hear this will get in contact with you and be able to work with you and be able to change the way that they're eating, because I really do believe that getting this message out will help change the way the world eats. And I know we need it. So again, thank you for being part of Plant Pathmakers today, where hopefully by living what we preach, we are changing the way the world eats and changing the health of the world in doing so. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And I look forward to continuing to follow you and see what you have on Instagram. And again, everybody out there should watch, because every day, well, not every day, every day that you post something, which is pretty much every day, the videos are so educational for me. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to get to talk to you today.
Yes, you too. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.